They stole Arielle Fenmere's voice in front of the dragon court because a prophecy that could not be spoken was easier to call treason than one the king might have to hear. No one asked why treason needed silence if the prophecy had truly lied. A false prophecy could be mocked. A dangerous one had to be swallowed. She knelt on the black glass floor beneath the open jaws of the silent spell, wrists bound in pale ash cord, throat bare, head lifted, because lowering it would let them pretend she had accepted the sentence. Around her, the court of Solvane stood in half circles of silver robes, black armor, and dragonbone jewelry, all watching the girl whose only crime was that her last prophecy had stopped before naming the guilty. No one asked why a prophecy bearer needed to be silenced if her words were already false. No one asked why High Voicewarden Orvain Dask had brought a bell made for convicted liars instead of a mirror made for truth. A mirror would have shown what stood before it. A bell could swallow what tried to leave. That was why Orvain had chosen sound over sight. Arielle's lips parted once. Nothing came out yet. The ritual had not begun. That small delay was the last mercy the hall allowed her. Orvain stood before her with both hands resting on the silver chain of the silence bell. He was tall, thin, and beautiful in the way. Knives were beautiful when polished for ceremony. His dark voice carried without effort. Arielle Fenmere, oath-bound prophecy, servant of the Crown of Ash, you are accused of withholding royal danger, poisoning court order with unfinished vision, and threatening the Dragon King through forbidden foretelling. Arielle looked past him. At the throne, Dragon King Vaelor Solvane sat beneath a canopy of black dragon ribs, one arm resting on the carved neck of the royal seat. His face unreadable. His hair was dark as storm iron, his eyes bright with old gold fire. He did not look away from her. That was almost worse. A cruel king might have smiled. A weak king might have looked at the floor. Vaelor watched as if he had already decided that silence was necessary. A king could want truth and still prefer it quiet. Arielle's throat tightened. She had stood before him 3 nights earlier in the lower prophecy chamber, candle smoke curling around her hands, the words of vision burning her tongue until she could barely breathe. She had seen a dragon without a mouth. Not dead. Not gone. Muted. She had seen a crown filled with stolen voices. A silver beast turning its head away from priests, mirrors, and fire. Then she had seen blood on the king's own signet. Before she could speak the final name, Orvain had struck the bowl from her hands and declared the vision corrupted. The vision had not failed. It had been interrupted at the name. And names were where prophecy stopped being missed and became accusation. Now the court called her dangerous. Not wrong, dangerous. There was a difference. Wrong girls could be dismissed. Dangerous girls had to be made useful by punishment. Speak your defense, Orvain said. Arielle knew the trap by the softness of his tone. She lifted her bound hands as far as the court allowed. The court had taken her prophecy tablets. They had burned her witness ink. They had removed every written line she had made after the interrupted vision. Only her mouth remained, and that was why they had brought the bell. I saw the king's dragon silent, she said. The hall shifted. Not loudly. Jewels clicked against collars. Sleeves tightened over fingers. A priest near the left pillar closed his eyes, as if even hearing the sentence again might stain him. Orvain's mouth thinned. You saw what fear taught you to see. Arielle turned her face toward Vaelor. No. I saw what someone trained the court not to hear. For the first time, the Dragon King moved. Only one finger against the throne arm, the smallest sound. Still, every guard noticed. Orvain noticed too. His hand closed around the silver chain. Enough. Arielle looked at Vaelor and forced the next words out before the bell could descend. Your dragon is not silent because it abandoned you. Gold fire sharpened in the king's eyes. Orvain pulled the chain. The silence bell dropped. It did not strike her head. It stopped above her throat, open-mouthed and hollow, and released a ring so deep the black glass floor trembled under her knees. Arielle screamed. For half a breath. Then the sound vanished. Not faded. Vanished. Her voice was ripped from her mouth, like a ribbon pulled through a wound. Blue-white light tore from her throat and spiraled upward into the bell. She clutched at her neck with bound hands, nails scraping skin, eyes wide as the court watched the most intimate part of her become evidence against her. The bell drank until there was nothing left. It had not judged her voice. It had stored it, Stored things could be returned only if the record stayed open. When Arielle tried to breathe out, a word-only silence moved. Orvain lifted one hand. The accused is sealed. Her corrupted prophecy can no longer infect the throne. Vaelor's face did not change, but his dragon did. Far above the court behind the black rib canopy, the ancient silver dragon carved into the wall opened one stone eye. Not to save her. To read what the bell had taken. Reading was not mercy. It left the wound in place. Arielle saw it before anyone else. Not because she was chosen. Because everyone else was watching her silence as punishment and she was the only one trapped inside it. The eye glowed blue-white. Vaelor rose from the throne. The hall froze with him. Behind Arielle, the silence thickened. Not sound. Not smoke. Something colder and older than both gathered at her back. The air folded inward, and from the empty space where her stolen voice should have been a massive silver dragon face began to form. Its jaws were made of quiet. Its horns were moon-pale. Its eyes opened like two buried stars. The priest stumbled back. Orvain's chain slipped in his hand. Arielle knelt without a voice, one hand pressed to her ruined throat, while the Dragon King stared past her with the first visible shock she had ever seen on his face. Then the ancient dragon spoke. Not aloud. Through the silence inside her. It was not her power. It was the record of her stolen voice finding a mouth inside the silence. And the record still needed her throat. The silence bell rang once without being touched. Voice removed. Final name retained. Prophecy path interrupted. Silence record opened. The bell had named the theft. It had not yet named the hand that stopped the prophecy. And every flame in the dragon court went blue. The ancient dragon had spoken through Arielle's silence, not for Arielle's sake. The truth of that settled colder than the blue flames. Arielle was still on her knees. Her throat still burned where the silence bell had torn her voice out. The pale ash cord still bound her wrists. Nothing in the hall had loosened because an ancient dragon had opened its eyes. No chain had fallen. No wound had closed. No one had returned the sound stolen from her mouth. Reading was not rescue, and record in Solvane could still leave the witness voiceless. The silver dragon face behind her remained half-formed from the silence at her back, vast and terrible. Its eyes fixed not on Arielle as a beloved vessel, but on the hollow space inside her throat, where the bell had stored what it took. Its jaws did not move like a living beast's. Its shape opened and closed around absence, listening to a record no one else had wanted read. Above Arielle, the silence bell hung inches from her ruined throat. It had not risen. It had not released her. It had only learned where to pull. The bell's inner rim glowed blue-white, and every pulse of light dragged a soundless ache through her neck. Her voice was inside it. She could feel that now. Not as speech, not as breath, as something trapped just beyond the edge of her body. Close enough to hurt, and too far away to use. High Voicewarden Orvain Dask recovered before the priest did. Stolen voice contamination, he said sharply. The bell has reacted to corrupted prophecy residue. The ancient dragon's eyes narrowed. Arielle could not speak. She could only look at him. Orvain stepped between her and the throne, one hand lifted toward the bell chain. Stolen voice records cannot be tried through a silenced servant throat. The phrase moved through the hall like cold ink. Silenced servant throat. Not prophecy bearer. Not witness. Not girl. Throat. The court did not need her whole body. It only needed the place where truth had tried to leave. That was how silence became procedure. It reduced a girl to a throat. Dragon King Vaelor Solvane descended one step from the throne. The blue flames sharpened against the black armor at his shoulders. His expression had changed, but not enough to save anyone yet. Shock had entered him. Guilt had not finished finding its shape. What did the dragon say? He asked. Orvain bowed without lowering his eyes. Nothing, admissible majesty. The ancient dragon has no direct speech here. It is echoing stolen voice fragments through a compromised vessel. Arielle's fingers curled against the ash cord. Compromised vessel. The words almost made her laugh, but the laugh died where her voice should have been. She was not chosen. She was not a holy mouth. She was the injury through which the record could still be reached. and injuries were easier for courts to use than witnesses. The silence bell pulsed again. Pain shot through her throat, and a thin line of blood slid from the center of her neck where no blade had touched. Arielle lowered her bound hands and pressed both palms against the wound. Her fingers trembled. Her lungs dragged in air that had no sound behind it. Then she pushed. Not with magic, with refusal. She pressed both bound hands to her throat and forced the bell to read the name it had swallowed. The silence bell rang once. No one touched it. The sound was not loud, but every blue flame leaned toward Arielle, as if the room itself had become an ear. The bell read. Prophecy entered. Final name reached. Voicewarden hand struck. King's signet concealed. The bell had named the signet. It had not yet named what burned beneath it. Vaelor stopped on the lower step. For the first time since the ritual began, he looked down at his own hand. The royal signet ring rested on his finger black gold and dragonfire stone. The mark of Solvane authority. Its surface looked clean beneath the court flames. But inside the blue light from the bell, a shadow moved under the gem, like something buried beneath glass. Orvain spoke quickly. Majesty's signet references in contaminated prophecy records often symbolize royal danger, not royal involvement. Arielle shook her head. The movement hurt. Her throat burned. Blood touched her fingertips. She pressed harder. The bell rang again, thinner this time, and the ancient dragon behind her turned its massive silence-made face toward Vaelor's hand. Not accusing with rage. Reading. That was worse. Vaelor's expression hardened. You struck the bowl. Orvain did not flinch. I stopped a corrupted vision before it injured the crown. You stopped it at the final name. I stopped it at the moment it became dangerous. The silence bell pulsed. Dangerous entered. Arielle looked at Vaelor. She had no voice to say the obvious thing. He heard it anyway. A dangerous prophecy was not always false. Sometimes it was only close. The king's jaw tightened. His gaze moved from Arielle's bleeding throat to the bell, then to the ancient dragon formed from her silence. I let them take her voice, Vaelor said, each word dragging against something in him because silence sounded safer than hearing my own danger named. His confession did not return her voice. It only made his fear part of the record. The bell accepted it. Royal fear entered. Voice theft permitted. Servant throat continuing. The last line was the only one Arielle believed without effort. Continuing. The word did not let him look noble. It did not let the court turn his admission into redemption. Her voice was still gone. The bell still held it. The record still needed her pain to stay open. Vaelor moved toward her. The ancient dragon's eye flared. The silence bell rode in blue fire across the air. Forced release collapses, stolen voice record. Final name lost. Silence servant condemned. Vaelor stopped. His hand remained half raised. Orvain saw the hesitation and seized it. He caught the bell chain with both hands, twisting it around his wrist until black runes smoked along the silver links. Then the record must be sealed before contamination spreads, he said. The bell lurched downward. Arielle's body bowed under the pressure. No sound came from her mouth. The pain had nowhere to go. The ancient dragon did not save her. It only watched the record being strangled. Vaelor's eyes burned gold blue. Orvain. The Voicewarden pulled harder. The blue lines above Arielle flickered. Prophecy entered dimmed. Final name reached broke at the edges. King's signet concealed shuddered, then sank toward the bell's mouth as if being swallowed again. Arielle forced her bleeding hands tighter around her throat. The bell rang one last time before the chain sealed half its voice. The silence bell had stored the stolen syllable because the guilty mark was already burning beneath the Dragon King's own signet. But a mark beneath a signet still had to be placed by a hand. The silence bell had named the signet but not the hand beneath it. A hand could hide under royal stone. A name could die under ritual silence. Arielle remained kneeling below its hollow mouth, her throat bleeding where no blade had cut. The ash cord around her wrists had soaked up the blood from her fingertips because she kept both hands pressed to her neck, not to heal it, but to keep the record from closing. Every breath scraped through silence. The court had not taken her life. It had taken the part of her that could interrupt theirs. Every pulse of the bell pulled at the stolen voice trapped above her, as if her own throat had become a hook. The ancient silver dragon behind her did not move to protect her. Its massive face stayed formed from the empty space. Her voice had left blue-white eyes fixed on Vaelor's royal signet. It read what the bell showed it. It did nothing more. Its silence was ancient, but it was still silence. And silence, however old, could still become useful to cruel men. And silence, Arielle was learning, could become another kind of cruelty when everyone waited for it to act like mercy. Vaelor stood with one hand half raised and the other curled around his ring. The black gold signet burned under the blue court flames, but the stone remained sealed, hiding whatever mark the bell had sensed beneath it. Orvain Dask still held the bell chain twisted around his wrist. Black runes crawled over the silver links and sank into the skin of his hand like ink-learning flesh. "The signet reading is inadmissible," he said. "Stolen voice contamination has reached royal authority." Arielle's eyes lifted to him. He did not look at her as a person. He looked at her throat. That was where his fear lived now. "Signet records cannot be tried through a stolen servant voice," Orvain continued. The silence bell pulsed. Stolen servant voice entered. Arielle's fingers tightened against her bleeding throat. The phrase should have broken something in her. Instead, it made her still. They had stolen her voice, then used the theft to deny what the stolen voice remembered. That was the cleanest cruelty wound first, disqualify second. That was how the Dragon Court kept its rights clean. It made injury into disqualification. Vaelor heard it too. His jaw hardened. "You keep naming the wound you made as the reason she cannot be believed." Orvain bowed. "I am naming procedure, Majesty." Arielle pressed her bloodied fingers deeper against the center of her throat. Pain widened. The bell answered. Not because she commanded it, because the record still needed the place where the stolen sound had been taken. The blue-white rim above her flickered. The ancient dragon turned its vast, silent face downward. Not toward Arielle's eyes, but toward the blood beneath her hands. Reading was not tenderness. It still used the wound. Arielle forced air through her ruined throat. No voice followed. Only a broken breath touched the bell's underside. The silence bell rang. Then it read. Signet mark entered. Voicewarden seal applied. Dragon mouth muted. Final name trapped. The bell had named the trap. It had not yet released the name inside it. The 4 lines burned above Vaelor's hand. The court changed in small, frightened ways. A priest dropped one bead from his prayer chain. A counselor's sleeve shook against his wrist. The dragon-bone torches bent their blue flames away from Orvain, as if even fire understood the direction of accusation before men dared to name it. Vaelor stared at the second line. Voicewarden seal applied. His signet had not bearded the mark, but it had hidden it. The authority of his hand, his throne, his permission, his fear, had covered another man's seal long enough for a prophecy to be stopped, a dragon mouth to be muted, and Arielle's final name to be trapped before it could leave her. Tongue. Orvain spoke carefully. A Voicewarden seal under royal stone is ceremonial reinforcement. It protects the throne from unstable prophecy. The ancient dragon's eyes burned brighter. The bell answered. Protection claim entered. Arielle almost wanted to laugh. No sound came. The laugh remained behind her teeth, dead before birth. Vaelor looked from Orvain to Arielle. His face had gone cold, not innocent. That mattered. He did not look like a man cleared by discovery. He looked like a king finding his own shadow written into the instrument that hurt her. If my signet hid the mark, he said, then my authority has been wearing the silence I allowed. His guilt did not return her voice. It only stopped pretending the silence belonged to her. The bell accepted it. Royal authority entered. Silence allowed. Servant throat continuing. Arielle's eyes stung. Not from gratitude. From the last line. Continuing. Again. Always. The record kept returning to the truth the court wished to walk around. She was still voiceless, still kneeling, still bleeding. While powerful men discovered how much of their order had been built through her kind of pain. And discovery was not payment. Vaelor looked at the line and lowered his head slightly. Not enough. Not yet. Orvain saw that too. His hand snapped down the bell chain. The silence bell lurched. The blue lines above Vaelor's signet bent inward, dragged toward the hollow mouth. The ancient dragon's face thinned at the edges, losing shape as the record tightened around Arielle's throat. "No further reading," Orvain said. "The bell chain seals signet contamination before it spreads into royal command." Vaelor moved. The warning burned across the black glass floor. "Forced release collapses signet record. Final name lost. Silenced servant condemned." He stopped so hard the stone cracked beneath his boot. Arielle saw the fight in him, the instinct to tear the bell from its chain, to cut Orvain down, to make a rescue look like justice. But if he broke the right now, the record would die with her voice still inside it. So Arielle shook her head once. Pain tore through her throat. No sound came. Vaelor understood. His hand lowered by inches. Orvain pulled the chain harder. The bell closed its light around the final line. Final name trapped flickered. Dragon mouth muted dimmed. Voicewarden's seal applied began to sink. Arielle pressed both bloody hands against her throat until her fingers slipped. The ancient dragon watched. The bell rang once more thin as a breath stolen at the edge of death. Orvain's seal had been pressed under the royal stone, muting the dragon mouth and trapping Arielle's final name before it could name the hand beneath the Voicewarden's office. The silence bell had named the trap, but not the final name trapped inside it. Arielle Fenmere stayed on her knees beneath the bell's hollow mouth, her throat slick beneath her bloodied fingers. The ash cord still locked her wrists close enough to make every movement small and painful. She could not speak. She could not accuse. She could not even gasp with sound when the bell's rim lowered another inch and pulled at the place where her stolen voice had been stored. The ancient silver dragon behind her did not move. Its face remained shaped from silence, vast and cold blue-white eyes fixed on the bell, as if reading the wound from the outside. It did not lower its head to shield her. It did not snap the chain. It did not choose her before the court. It only watched the record struggle to stay open through the throat that had been broken for it. Reading was not mercy. Arielle knew that now better than anyone in the hall. High Voicewarden Orvain Dask raised his chained wrist and black runes crawled from the bell chain toward his fingers. "The final name sequence is corrupted," he said. "Stolen throat contamination has entered royal signet evidence." Stolen throat. The words reached Arielle more cleanly than pity would have. First they had stolen her voice. Then they had reduced her to the wound left behind. Now they called that wound contamination because it remembered too well. Vaelor Solvane stood near the lower throne step, the blue flame of the record shining across his signet. His ring no longer looked merely royal. Beneath the black stone, Orvain's hidden seal pulsed like a bruise under skin. "Let the bell finish," Vaelor said. Orvain's reply came immediately. "Final name records cannot be tried through a stolen throat." The silence bell pulsed. Final name records entered. Stolen throat entered. Arielle closed her eyes for one breath. No voice returned. Only pressure. The stolen syllable waited somewhere inside the bell, close enough that her body understood its shape too far for her mouth to claim. The name had been almost spoken. It had reached the edge of her tongue before Orvain struck the prophecy bowl. That edge was still inside her, raw and unfinished. She lowered her bound hands from the center of her throat to just beneath her jaw. Blood followed her fingers. The bell brightened. A priest whispered a word under his breath. A counselor stepped back from the blue light. Orvain's face remained controlled, but the chain around his wrist tightened as if the metal itself had begun to fear him. Arielle pressed her bloodied fingers beneath her jaw and forced the bell to read the name without giving her voice back. The pain came like cold fire. Her body bent forward. No sound left her mouth. The bell rang for her. Final name reached. Voicewarden title crossed. Orvain mark concealed. Dragon mouth bound. The 4 lines burned across the air, each one sharper than the last. Voicewarden title crossed. Vaelor's eyes moved from the words to Orvain. The title had been used like a veil. Not a name, not a body, not a man standing beside the ritual with one hand on the chain. The prophecy had reached Voicewarden. Then the title itself had crossed the line, hiding Orvain beneath office, the way his seal hid beneath royal stone. Orvain bowed slightly. Titles often appear in prophecy as institutional symbols, Majesty. It does not follow that the office holder is personally named. The silence bell answered before Vaelor could. Orvane mark concealed. The line flared brighter. Arielle's fingers shook against her throat. There. Not full speech. Not justice. Not yet. But the record had reached the man. Vaelor looked at Arielle then, and guilt sharpened into something more useful than shock. If her throat must hold the name, he said, then my court is still using the silence I permitted. The bell accepted him. Royal court entered. Silence permitted. Throat contact continuing. Arielle opened her eyes. The last line stayed. Continuing. Again, the record refused to flatter him. It did not let his recognition become rescue. It did not let his anger pay for the fact that she still knelt with blood on her hands and no voice in her mouth. Orvane pulled the chain. The bell dropped lower. Arielle's vision flashed white. Vaelor stepped forward, but the black glass floor warned him in blue fire. Forced release collapses, final name record. Name lost. Silenced servant condemned. He stopped. His jaw clenched so hard the muscles moved beneath his skin. Arielle saw the cost of stopping. She also saw the necessity. If he broke the bell now, Orvane would call the final name unstable. Her stolen voice would become corrupted evidence. The court would remember the spectacle, not the reading. She shook her head once. It hurt enough to make darkness touch the edge of her sight. Vaelor understood. He did not move. Orvane's voice lowered. Majesty, there is still time to preserve royal order. End this before the court mistakes a wounded servant's throat for law. Arielle pressed harder beneath her jaw. The ancient dragon's eyes narrowed, reading the final line as Orvane tried to choke it back into silence. The bell rang once more, thin and terrible. The final name inside the silence bell was not lost. It had been folded beneath Orvane's Voicewarden seal, bound to the muted dragon mouth so Arielle could be called traitor before she ever named the man who stole the king's warning. Orvane's name did not appear in full letters yet, but the hall had felt its shape. It moved behind the title Voicewarden like a body behind a veil. No noble dared say it. No priest dared look straight at him. The silence bell still held the final name inside its hollow mouth, and Arielle still knelt beneath it with her bloodied fingers pressed under her jaw, unable to make even one sound of accusation. The court had been given a direction, not an ending. That made it more dangerous. Orvane lowered his chained wrist slowly. The black runes along the bell chain tightened into neat lines, making his control look ceremonial again. The record has reached interpretive instability, he said. A title does not equal a man. A mark does not equal guilt. A stolen throat cannot transform office function into personal accusation. Arielle stared at him. Stolen throat. Again. He kept saying it because it let him use her wound as a wall. Vaelor stood motionless near the throne, his signet burning under blue light. The hidden seal beneath the royal stone had not vanished. It pulsed faintly, answering Orvane's chain, like a buried ember answering wind. The ancient dragon behind Arielle turned its silence-made face toward the king's hand. Not to judge with emotion, to read what had been placed there. Vaelor saw it. The final name was hidden under his office, but the record said he stole my warning. Orvane's expression remained controlled. Warnings are common in unstable prophecy. The court protects the crown by filtering terror before it becomes political fracture. Arielle's eyes narrowed. Filtering terror. Another clean phrase. Another polished door over a pit. The silence bell answered with a low pulse. Filtering entered. Vaelor looked at Arielle, then at the bell. What warning? Orvane stepped forward at once. Warning records cannot be tried through title-contaminated silence. Arielle's fingers tightened beneath her jaw until fresh blood slipped over her knuckles. No voice came back. The stolen name still pressed against the inside of the bell. Her throat held only the wound that kept the record open. She understood now that the bell had more than one appetite. It had swallowed her voice, but it could be forced to show the shape of what it swallowed if her body stayed connected to the taking. She hated that. She used it anyway. Arielle dragged one bound hand lower to the hollow of her throat and pressed where the vanished scream still burned. The bell rang. Warning entered. Dragon mouth resisted. Voicewarden seal tightened. Royal fear used. The final line cut toward Vaelor. Royal fear used. The king did not look away. Good. Arielle could not speak, so the record had to hurt him where her voice would have. The blue fire above the court folded into a new vision. Not the prophecy chamber. Not the current hall. A smaller room appeared high in the palace, its walls lined with silver scales and black glass. Vaelor stood there, younger, not boyish but newly crowned. His mother's portrait hung behind him, veiled in mourning cloth. Before him lay the ancient dragon's speaking mirror, cracked across its center. Orvain stood beside it. The queen heard too much prophecy, the younger Orvain said in the vision. Truth unfiltered ruined her mind. Let the Voicewarden order the dragon's speech before it reaches you. Younger Vaelor's face was pale with grief. Not innocent. Grieving men could still give dangerous permission. What did the dragon try to say, present? Vaelor asked. The bell pulsed. Arielle pressed harder. The ancient dragon's silent face behind her opened its jaws, but no sound came out. The vision showed the same. The speaking mirror flared silver, the dragon mouth inside it, forming words that never reached the room. The bell read. Dragon warning initiated. Voicewarden order inserted. Maternal grief invoked. King consent obtained. Vaelor's eyes closed for one breath. Arielle watched him. She wanted his grief to matter less than her blood. That was not cruelty. It was balance. Orvain spoke over the vision. Your mother's decline is documented, Majesty. Unfiltered prophecy shattered her reason. I preserved you from the same fate. Vaelor opened his eyes. You used her death to make me afraid of the dragon. Orvain bowed his head. I used history to preserve the crown. The silence bell rang. History used. Crown preserved entered. Arielle's throat burned so sharply she nearly collapsed forward. The ash cord caught her wrists before her hands could leave the wound. If her fingers slipped, the line would close. If the line closed, Orvain would call the warning unstable. Vaelor saw her sway. He moved. The floor flared. Forced release collapses warning record. Dragon mouth remains muted. Silence servant condemned. He stopped again. Fury locked behind his teeth. Arielle could not thank him for restraint. She would not have thanked him anyway. Restraint now did not erase permission then. Vaelor turned toward Orvain. If my fear gave your seal a place to stand, then my throne helped build the silence that is cutting her. The bell accepted him. Royal fear seated. Voicewarden seal sustained. Servant wound continuing. Arielle's eyes burned at the last line. Continuing. The record never let the powerful forget what their revelations cost, because it had to keep charging that cost to her throat. Orvain's controlled face finally hardened. Majesty, she is becoming a ritual hazard. End the reading. Vaelor's voice dropped. No. Orvain pulled the chain. The blue vision cracked. The younger Vaelor, the speaking mirror, the muted dragon mouth all began to fold back into the bell. Arielle pressed both hands to her throat, shaking blood sliding beneath her collarbone. The ancient dragon did not save her. It only kept its eyes open. The silence bell rang one final time before the warning vision narrowed into darkness. The king's warning had not been stolen because the dragon lied. Orvain had used Vaelor's grief over his mother to tighten the Voicewarden seal, binding the dragon mouth before it could warn the newly crowned king that prophecy was being filtered through the man who feared being named. The warning vision collapsed, but the mourning cloth over Queen Saravel's portrait kept burning blue. No one had touched it. The black veil covering Vaelor's dead mother trembled against the painted frame. Though there was no wind inside the dragon court, blue fire crawled along its embroidered edge, catching on old silver thread shaped like closed dragon eyes. The court looked at the portrait with the careful fear reserved for dead queens and forbidden explanations. Arielle Fenmere still knelt beneath the silence bell. Her voice was still gone. Blood had dried sticky beneath her jaw, and fresh blood had opened again where her fingers pressed too hard against the wound. The bell held the stolen sound above her like a punishment paused in midair. It had read Vaelor's fear. It had read Orvain's seal. But it had not released her. And every new record seemed to require more of the throat the court had already ruined. The ancient silver dragon's face hovered behind her, thinning at the edges where Orvain's chain had tightened the record. It did not lift her. It did not burn the chain. It only watched the portrait of the dead queen as if another layer of silence had begun to breathe. Vaelor followed its gaze. "My mother," he said. The words did not sound like a command. They sounded like a wound he had kept royal by refusing to touch it. Orvane's face changed for less than a heartbeat. The shift was small, but Arielle saw it. Not fear exactly. Calculation. He had expected the record to reach his seal. He had expected the king's grief to be named. He had not expected the dead queen to become visible inside the same silence. "Maternal grief is outside the charge," Orvane said. "The servant is accused of corrupt prophecy, not of interpreting royal mourning." Arielle's eyes lifted. He was already building another wall. Orvane looked down at her throat. "Queen records cannot be tried through a stolen servant voice." The silence bell pulsed. Queen records entered. Stolen servant voice entered. Vaelor's hand curled slowly beside his armor. "Every time you name what you stole from her, the bell writes it down." Orvane bowed. "The bell records contamination because contamination is present." Arielle pressed her bloodied fingers lower against her throat, just above the hollow between her collarbones. Pain answered. "Not power. Not destiny. Pain." The bell's rim brightened. The stolen voice inside it pulled toward the dead queen's portrait, like a thread snagging on old cloth. Arielle forced the record open. The silence bell rang. Queen warning entered. Speaking mirror sealed. Dragon testimony fragmented. Madness record produced. The word madness burned dark blue. Vaelor went still. Not pale. Still. The kind of stillness that came before a blade was drawn, or a man's memory broke under its own weight. The portrait veil split down the center. Behind it, Queen Saravel's painted eyes opened in blue fire. The vision unfolded around her frame. A woman in white mourning silk stood before the speaking mirror Arielle had seen in the prior record. Her hair was unbound. Her hands braced on the mirror's frame. The ancient dragon's mouth moved inside the glass, trying to speak. No sound came. Then the mirror showed 3 different visions at once, Vaelor dying with black fire in his chest. Vaelor crowned over a silent dragon, Vaelor turning away from a prophecy bearer with blood on her throat. Queen Saravel staggered back. The visions repeated. Again. 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 Each time the dragon mouth tried to correct them, Orvane's seal crossed the mirror and broke the testimony into fragments. The queen whispered something, but the sound came through the bell as torn breath. The silence bell read. Warning loop inserted. Dragon correction blocked. Queen distress witnessed. Madness conclusion entered. Arielle's fingers slipped in her own blood. The record flickered. Vaelor saw it and took one step. The floor answered in blue fire. Forced release collapses, Queen record. Madness conclusion restored. Silenced servant condemned. He stopped. Arielle hated that he had learned to stop, only after she had been made into the lesson. Vaelor's eyes did not leave the vision. She was not hearing too much prophecy. Orvane's voice remained smooth. Her condition was witnessed by the court physicians. The physicians saw distress. They recorded madness, because the mirror kept showing her broken warnings. Orvane lifted his chin. A queen unable to withstand prophecy endangers succession. Arielle pressed harder against her throat, though her hands shook. The bell rang in answer. Succession fear entered. Queen voice discredited. Voicewarden dependency secured. There it was, not only grief. A design. If Vaelor believed prophecy destroyed his mother, he would fear every unfiltered vision after her. He would rely on the Voicewarden to make prophecy safe. He would allow bowls to be struck, mouths to be sealed, bells to be lowered because silence would sound like mercy to a king raised on a false memory of madness. Vaelor looked at Arielle then. He did not look forgiven. Good. If I called silence protection because I believed it had failed to protect her, he said, then I made your wound inherit my mother's lie. The bell accepted it. Royal inheritance entered. Servant wound continuing. Arielle stared at the last line. Continuing. The dead queen had suffered. Vaelor had been deceived. Orvane had built a doctrine from both. And Arielle still had no voice. Orvane pulled the chain hard enough to make the silence bell drop until its rim nearly touched her skin. Blue fire collapsed inward. The queen's portrait began to close its eyes. Vaelor's voice cut through the hall. Do not seal her. Orvain did not look at him. I am sealing an unstable queen record before it infects the throne. Arielle pressed both hands to her throat and held the line open with the only thing the court had left her. The bell rang once more. Queen Saravel had not been ruined by prophecy. Orvain had looped broken dragon warnings through the sealed mirror until distress looked like madness, so Vaelor would fear every unfiltered voice that might someday name the hand controlling what dragons were allowed to say. Queen Saravel's painted eyes closed, but the blue fire did not leave the frame. It crawled from the portrait down the black glass wall, running through old silver lines carved beneath the throne like veins that had been hidden under polish. The court had walked across those lines for years. Priests had stood beside them. Voicewardens had sworn ceremonies over them. Kings had ruled above them. Now the lines burned. Arielle Fenmere knelt beneath the silence bell with her bloodied hands pressed to her throat, watching the floor reveal a pattern no servant had ever been permitted to study from above. A circle, a bell, a dragon mouth, and between them a kneeling figure without a face. Her voice was still gone. The bell still held it. The ancient silver dragon behind her did not tear down the court or wrap its body around her. Its silence-made face hovered over the burning pattern, reading the old lines as if they belonged to a law older than Orvain's office and colder than Vaelor's grief. Orvain saw the pattern and stepped in front of it too quickly. Foundation rights are not part of the active charge, he said. The queen record has already exceeded lawful scope. Vaelor's eyes were fixed on the faceless figure between the bell and the dragon mouth. What is that? Orvain did not turn. Symbolic ritual geometry. Arielle looked at him. Even voiceless, she knew when a man lied by making the word too clean. The silence bell pulsed. Symbolic entered. The floor line beneath the faceless figure brightened. Vaelor took one careful step closer, stopping before the warning could flare. He had learned not to save the record by force. He had also learned that learning was not payment. Arielle's throat throbbed as if the bell had hooked itself into the wound and waited for her to move first. Orvain lifted the chain. Foundation geometry cannot be tried through a damaged prophecy throat, the bell answered. Damaged prophecy throat entered. Arielle closed her eyes. Damaged. Not stolen. Not wounded by ritual. Damaged. That was how the court made violence sound like condition. She dragged her right hand from her throat and pressed two bloody fingers to the burning line beneath the faceless figure. Her left hand stayed at her neck to keep the record open. The ash cord cut into her wrists as she bent forward. Pain moved from her throat into her arm like a single wire pulled too tight. The bell rang. The floor read. Silence mouth right entered. Voice removed. Dragon testimony redirected. Witness standing denied. The words appeared around the faceless figure. Silence mouth. The court did not breathe loudly enough for the sound to count as reaction, but every face changed. Priests who had mocked stolen voice contamination now stared at the floor, as if the old law had opened beneath their shoes. Arielle did not understand the term. Not fully. But she understood enough to hate it. The right had a name for her wound. Orvain recovered. A prohibited term from pre-Solvane ritual drafts. It has no standing in modern court procedure. The bell pulsed. Standing denied. Vaelor looked at Arielle, then at the faceless figure. She is a witness. Orvain's answer was immediate. She is a silenced accused. Arielle pressed her bloodied fingers harder into the burning line. The pain turned sharp enough to make her vision swim. The bell read again. Silence mouth witness. One whose stolen voice permits dragon testimony when royal speech is filtered. Not vessel, not chosen, not protected. Throat contact required. The words landed one by one. Not vessel. Arielle's eyes lifted to the ancient dragon. It looked back at her with terrible stillness. Not tender. Not claiming. Reading. That was all. She was not its bride, its chosen mouth, or some hidden queen the court had failed to recognize. She was the place where the theft had remained open. The wound made testimony possible because Orvain had taken her voice at the moment the name reached the edge of speech. Vaelor read the same lines. His face tightened at the last one. Throat contact required. If the testimony needs her throat, he said. slowly. Then every answer we pull from this record is still using what was stolen from her. The bell accepted it. Royal understanding entered. Witness pain continuing. Arielle stared at the final line. Continuing. Again. The word had become the most honest thing in the hall. Orvane's chain snapped taut. Majesty, the term silence-mouth witness is forbidden because it destabilizes prophecy hierarchy. If every silenced servant may claim witness standing the Voicewarden office collapses, Arielle looked at him through blood and blue fire. There it was. Not safety. Office. The ancient dragon's eyes narrowed. The bell rang without her moving. Office preservation entered. Vaelor turned to Orvane. You stole her voice to prevent a final name. Then your office denied the only standing that could make the stolen voice admissible. Orvane's mouth thinned. I protected the throne from unfiltered accusation. No, Vaelor said. You protected your office from the witness your own ritual created. The bell burned brighter. Voicewarden contradiction entered. Orvane pulled the chain down. The silence bell dropped so close to Arielle's throat that its cold rim kissed the blood there. Her body went rigid. No sound came. The floor warning flared before Vaelor could move. Forced release collapses silence mouth record. Witness standing lost. Silence servant condemned. Arielle shook once beneath the pressure, but kept one hand on her throat and one hand on the burning line. Do not break it. She could not say the words. Vaelor read them in her refusal. He stopped. Orvane's voice cut through the blue fire. The accused cannot become law because the bell reacts to its own contamination. Arielle forced her bloody fingers against the faceless figure until the burned line opened beneath her touch. The bell gave one final hollow sound. The silence-mouth witness was not chosen by the dragon. She was created by the theft itself, a living throat contact whose stolen voice could carry ancient dragon testimony, so long as the court kept her voiceless enough to need the bell, and wounded enough for the record to stay open. The faceless figure on the floor did not rise. It changed. Blue fire crawled over the carved outline until the kneeling shape matched Arielle's posture exactly, one hand pressed to the throat, one hand braced against the burning line, wrists bound, head lifted beneath the bell's open mouth. The court saw the shape and understood what it had been trying not to understand. The old rite had not drawn a symbol. It had drawn a use. Arielle Fenmere remained voiceless inside it. The silence bell still held her stolen voice, and every pulse of blue light dragged against the wound in her throat. The ancient dragon's face hovered behind her, silent and vast, reading the floor through the shape the court had carved long before her birth. It did not save her from the pattern. It only made the pattern visible. Orvane Dask looked at the burning figure and spoke with the calm of a man trying to nail a door shut while the wall burned around it. Historical rite shapes do not create legal standing. The bell pulsed. Legal standing entered. Vaelor's eyes stayed on Arielle. Then, what denies it? Orvane's gaze flicked to him. The accused is under active silence judgment. She cannot become a witness while the bell holds her voice. Arielle's bloody fingers stiffened against the floor. There it was. The circle completed itself. They stole the voice to deny the witness. Then they denied the witness because the voice was stolen. The silence bell answered with a low, hollow tone. Voice held. Witness denied. Accused maintained. Procedure sustained. The last line made the priests nearest Orvane shift back half a step. Procedure sustained. Not truth. Not safety. Procedure. Vaelor read the words slowly, and something in his face changed. Not softening. Sharpening. My court made her voiceless, then used her voicelessness to keep her accused. Orvane bowed. The court preserved order. Arielle pressed harder into the burned line. Pain climbed her arm and sank into her throat. Her vision swam, but the line beneath her fingers opened wider, revealing a smaller circle beneath the first. Inside it lay marks carved in old prophecy script, so worn that even the court scholars leaned forward before they remembered they were afraid. The bell read, Witness standing requested. Voicewarden review required. Voicewarden denial applied. Dragon testimony suspended. Arielle's hand shook. Voicewarden review required. Of course. The office that could steal the voice also judged whether the stolen voice could testify. Orvain had built a door only he could close, then called every locked body unlawful for remaining trapped outside. Vaelor turned to him. You reviewed the witness standing of the girl you silenced. Orvain's answer came quick and clean. A Voicewarden must review all dangerous prophecy contacts. You made her dangerous. I identified danger already present. The bell rang. Danger assigned. Arielle stared at the phrase. Assigned. Not discovered. Assigned. Her throat burned around a sound she could not make. She wanted to say it herself. She wanted the court to hear her voice shape the word and make it impossible for Orvain to polish it into doctrine. But the bell still held her, so she used what remained. Arielle lifted her bloodied hand from the floor and touched the ash cord around her wrists. The cord had been tied by court guards before the bell descended, before the record opened, before anyone knew the ancient dragon would answer through her silence. The binding was not part of the bell. It was part of the accusation. She pressed the blood from her fingertips onto the knot. The silence bell trembled. Orvain's expression hardened. The accused may not alter restraint evidence. Arielle looked at Vaelor. She had no voice, but she had blood on the cord, and the bell still listened to contact. Vaelor understood too late, and just in time. Read the restraint. The bell rang. Ash cord applied. Defense tablets removed. Witness ink burned. Silence judgment prepared before final review. The court went very still. Prepared before final review. The ritual had not been an answer to her guilt. It had been waiting for her before the court pretended to ask whether she was guilty. Orvain's mouth tightened. Preliminary containment is lawful in prophecy matters. Vaelor's voice lowered. You prepared her silence before hearing her defense. I prepared the court for danger. Arielle's eyes burned. She had known the answer before the line appeared, but knowing and seeing were different wounds. They had not silenced her because she failed to defend herself. They had removed every defense because silence had already been chosen. The bell wrote again. Defense impossible. Accusation preserved. Throat contact required. Vaelor looked at the last line, then at Arielle's bleeding neck. If her silence was prepared before judgment, then this court did not try her. It arranged her usefulness. The bell accepted it. Royal recognition entered. Servant usefulness exposed. Throat contact continuing. Arielle lowered her eyes briefly. Continuing. Again, the record refused to let his recognition become rescue. He could see the mechanism. He could name the wrong. But she was still trapped beneath the bell that made every truth cost her body first. Orvain seized the chain with both hands. The reading has become hostile to court structure. The bell lurched downward. Arielle's breath vanished into pain. Vaelor stepped forward and the floor flashed. Forced release collapses, witness standing record. Accusation restored. Silence servant. Condemned. He stopped with his hand clenched at his side. Arielle kept her bloody fingers on the ash cord knot. The ancient dragon watched the cord, the bell, the carved figure, and the king who had to learn that not every rescue could begin with force. Orvain pulled harder. Blue fire bent inward. The witness standing lines began to fold. Arielle pressed the cord against her throat and forced the bell to hold one final sentence. The dragon court had not denied Arielle standing, because she was false. It had prepared her silence before judgment burned her defense and kept her bound beneath the bell so her stolen throat could carry dragon testimony, while Orvain's office refused to let that testimony become accusation. The burned witness lines tried to fold back into the floor, but Arielle kept the ash cord pressed to her throat. The knot scratched against the wound where her voice had been taken. Blood soaked into the pale fibers and turned them dark. The silence bell trembled above her, caught between Orvain's chain and Arielle's contact, between an office that wanted the record sealed and a stolen throat that refused to become silent evidence against itself. No voice came back. Not one breath of sound. The bell still owned it. The ancient silver dragon remained behind her, vast and unreadable, its face shaped from absence. It did not break the ash cord. It did not burn Orvain's hand. It did not make Arielle powerful before the court. It only watched the floor record struggle to decide whether a voiceless girl could be allowed to accuse the office that made her voiceless. Vaelor stood frozen before the warning line, every inch of him held back by the knowledge that force would destroy what Arielle had suffered to open. Orvain saw the restraint and mistook it for victory. "The witness standing record is collapsing," he said. "The accused cannot hold legal contact and ritual contamination at once." Arielle lifted her eyes to him. Accused. That was the word he needed most. If she remained accused, her silence stayed useful but inadmissible. If she became witness, the same silence became record. The difference was not truth. The difference was who controlled the name of her wound. Vaelor's voice cut across the hall. "What converts testimony into accusation?" Orvain's face went still. Too still, Arielle noticed. The bell noticed too. Its rim glowed blue-white. Orvain answered carefully. "Only a recognized witness may accuse through dragon testimony. And who recognizes the witness? The Voicewarden office." Vaelor stared at him. "The same office being accused." Orvain bowed. "The same office entrusted with filtering dangerous prophecy." The silence bell rang. Filtering dangerous prophecy entered. Office judges accusation against itself. The line burned between them. For the first time, several priests looked away from Orvain before looking away from the king. Arielle pressed the cord harder against her throat. Pain widened until the black glass waiter beneath dragged her knees. She held on. The record did not need her courage. It needed contact. That made the courage uglier, but no less necessary. The bell read. Witness standing requested. Voicewarden office conflicted. Royal signet required. Dragonmouth testimony pending. Vaelor looked down at his ring. The black stone still hid the mark where Orvain's seal had been pressed under royal authority. Blue fire moved beneath it like a trapped eye. The same signet that had concealed the seal was now being named as the required key. Arielle's stomach tightened. The court had made the king's authority cover the crime. Now the bell required that same authority to uncover it. Vaelor understood the trap. His expression changed, not with fear of being implicated, but with the weight of being necessary in a wound he had allowed. "If I use the signet," he said, "does it release her voice?" The bell answered. Voice return prohibited until accusation secured. Throat contact continuing. Arielle closed her eyes. Of course. Even now, release came after usefulness. Vaelor's jaw tightened. "No." Orvain's eyes sharpened. "Majesty." Vaelor looked at the bell. "No. Her throat will not be treated as expendable after the record is done with it." The bell did not soften. It only wrote. Royal objection entered. Procedure unchanged. Arielle opened her eyes again. Procedure unchanged. Even a king's objection could become decorative if it did not change the mechanism. Vaelor read the line and went still. Then he slowly removed the royal signet from his finger. The hall did not move. The ring had never left a Solvane king's hand in public. Coronations were sworn through it. Execution orders were sealed through it. Prophecy rights were protected beneath it. The signet was not jewelry. It was the hand of the throne made small enough to wear. Orvain stepped forward. Majesty removing the signet during active prophecy. Contamination destabilizes sovereign authority. Vaelor did not look at him. Good. The word was quiet. It carried. Arielle's bloodied fingers trembled against the ash cord. Vaelor held the signet toward the bell but did not touch Arielle. He had learned that contact without permission could become another form of taking. "Arielle Fenmere," he said, voice low enough that it did not perform for the court. "I cannot ask your voice. So I ask your record." "May I place the signet before the bell?" Arielle stared at him. The question hurt almost as much as the bell. Not because it fixed anything, because it arrived after so much had already been taken without asking. She could not answer. So she used the only response the record would take. She pressed her bloodied thumb to the ash cord and pushed it once toward the bell. The silence bell rang. Consent through record contact entered. Vaelor's face tightened at the phrase. Consent should not have had to travel through blood. He placed the signet beneath the bell's rim. Blue fire struck the black stone. Orvain shouted, "Seal the chain!" The Voicewarden yanked hard. The bell dropped. Arielle bowed under the force, but the signet burned open before the chain could swallow the line. Beneath the royal stone, Orvain's hidden seal split like black wax in fire. The ancient dragon's silent mouth opened behind her. Still no sound. Only record. The bell read. Royal signet opened. Voicewarden seal exposed. Dragon mouth testimony permitted. Accusation threshold reached. Orvain went pale. Not defeated. Cornered. Vaelor looked at him. Now it can accuse. Orvain's voice turned cold. Only if the witness survives the bell long enough. The chain snapped downward. The silence bell slammed its pressure over Arielle's throat and darkness rushed to the edge of her sight. Vaelor moved, but the warning flared again. Forced release collapses accusation threshold. Voice remains stolen. Witness condemned. Arielle clutched the ash cord, her bloodied hands slipping. The ancient dragon did not save her. It only held its mouth open. The silence bell burned one final line into the air. To secure Arielle's accusation and return her voice, Vaelor had to let the dragon mouth speak through the opened royal signet, while Orvain's chain was still choking the witness who made the testimony possible. The opened royal signet threw blue fire across the underside of the silence bell. The black stone split at its center, not breaking but revealing the hidden seal beneath it. Orvain's mark pressed under royal authority like a worm sealed inside amber. The court saw it clearly now. Not symbol, not metaphor, not prophecy smoke. A Voicewarden seal buried beneath the Dragon King's own ring, feeding silence through the one object every command in Solvane obeyed. Arielle Fenmere knelt beneath the bell, half-blind from pain, her bloodied hands slipping on the ash cord at her throat. Her voice was still gone. The accusation had not finished. The ancient silver dragon opened its mouth behind her, but no living roar came out. It did not protect her. It did not choose her. The testimony moved through the opened signet, through the bell, through the wound her stolen voice had left. The silence bell read. Dragon mouth testimony entered. Royal signet opened. Voicewarden seal exposed. Witness throat contact active. Arielle's body shook at the last line. Active. Not honored. Not healed. Used. Vaelor saw it and something hard crossed his face. He held the open signet beneath the bell with one hand and kept the other hand away from Arielle, though every part of him looked like it wanted to tear the chain from Orvain's wrist. Orvain pulled that chain until the links cut into his skin. The testimony remains dependent on a contaminated witness, he said. No accusation can stand until the witness is released from contamination. Arielle's eyes lifted. Even voiceless, she knew the shape of that trap. Release her too soon and the record collapsed. Keep her under the bell. And Orvain called her contaminated. Wound first. Disqualify second. Vaelor's voice turned cold. Then I named the contamination. The bell pulsed. Royal naming entered. Orvain stiffened. Vaelor raised the signet higher. Blue fire streamed from the split stone into the silent dragon's open mouth. The dragon's testimony did not arrive as a roar. It arrived as record, each line burning across the black glass floor where no priest could scrape it away fast enough. Voice stolen before judgment. Final name trapped. Voicewarden seal concealed under royal signet. Orvain Dask named. The name struck the hall like iron laid on bone. Not shouted. Entered. Orvain did not confess. He drew himself taller. A Voicewarden may seal dangerous names when they threaten crown survival. The bell answered. Danger assigned. Crown survival claimed. Voice theft proven. Arielle's fingers loosened. The record wavered. Vaelor noticed before Orvain did. He lowered himself to one knee before her, still not touching her, the opened signet held between the bell and her throat. Arielle, he said, and his voice broke around the name without making it soft. Hold the line once more. Not for me. Not for the throne. For your voice to return as yours, not as evidence. Her eyes burned. That was the closest thing to justice anyone had offered her, and even it asked for more pain. She hated that. She still held on. With a final movement, she pressed the ash cord knot to the blood beneath her jaw. The bell rang. Witness endurance entered. Accusation secured. Silence judgment voidable only by standing. Vaelor looked at the last word. Standing. He rose. Not fully. Only enough for the hall to see his face, the signet burning open in his hand, and Arielle still kneeling before him because the record was not done charging her for truth. By royal signet opened before dragon testimony, he said Arielle Fenmere is no longer accused. She is silence mouth witness to stolen prophecy, Voicewarden interference and dragon mouth suppression. Her throat will not be called contamination by the office that stole from it. The bell wrote every word in blue fire. Silence mouth witness entered. Accusation removed. Voice return permitted after chain release. Orvane yanked the bell chain toward himself. The king cannot redefine forbidden witness standing during active right. Vaelor turned to him. The king should not have let your right stand long enough to make her forbidden. The line burned from the bell before Orvane could answer. Royal fault entered. Arielle watched that line more than she watched Orvane's face. Good. Let the record keep that too. Vaelor lifted the opened signet. Orvane Dask. Your office is stripped from the silence bell. Your seal is void. Your chain no longer speaks for the dragon mouth. The ancient dragon's eyes flared, not with affection. With release of record, the bell chain cracked. One link then another split down the center and fell to the black glass floor. Orvane tried to hold the final strand, but blue fire ran through the metal and burned his grip open. Guards seized him only after the chain broke, after the record held, after the accusation no longer depended on his permission to be heard. The silence bell lifted. Slowly, cruelly, as if reluctant to return what it had swallowed. Arielle's hands fell from her throat. No voice came at first. Only breath, raw, uneven. Hers. Vaelor stepped closer, then stopped. May I cut the cord? Arielle looked at the ash cord around her wrists, at the bell above her, at the king whose fear had helped silence sound lawful. Her throat worked. Pain moved through her like broken glass. Then one word came out, faint and ruined but real. Wait. Vaelor stopped immediately. The court heard it. Arielle heard it. Her own voice, damaged but alive, had returned to her mouth instead of the bell. She turned toward the silence bell and forced another word through the wound. Record. The bell rang one final time. Arielle Fenmere's voice was stolen to stop a prophecy from naming Orvane Dask. The ancient dragon did not choose her. The bell did not bless her. The theft made her witness, and the court used her throat, until standing made the voice hers again. The blue fire settled. Arielle pushed herself upright before Vaelor could touch her. Her knees shook. Blood marked her throat. The court watched a voiceless servant become a named witness, then become a woman standing on her own feet. Only then did Vaelor bow his head to her. Not to the bell. Not to the dragon. To Arielle. I cannot undo the silence I allowed, he said. No, she answered, voice rough and quiet. I can answer for it. You will. The ancient dragon behind her closed its mouth at last, and for the first time in years the silence in the dragon court belonged to no one's chain.